everybody. My name is Dean Olson. I am a songwriter, radio host, and producer from Orange County, California, and I'm really just an average guy making music. But when I get behind this microphone, I become the strong writer on the radio, helping songwriters and artists keep musically fit. And the way I love to do that is through faith and hope and encouragement, by taking in the stories and experiences told to me by my wonderful guests, and by learning from the best in the business and passing it along to you. And now, it's another great day for a fantastic show, and I want to welcome you to it, and I'm really excited to be featuring a very talented songwriter. The man you're seeing on the screen with me here is Jack Tempchin. He was on my radio show a couple of years ago, and a few things have happened since then, so I'm really honored that he's returning to my program, and this time in living color with a Zoom green screen and everything, and this is really awesome. I'd love to catch up with him. For almost 50 years, though, Jack has been active writing hits for people like Glenn Frey and the Eagles, Johnny Rivers, and for himself. And his songs have been recorded by so many different of the top artists, and I'm going to ask him about that. And I'm starting to sputter a little bit because I'm so nervous that I'm going to screw up. But you know what? Jack is a real nice guy, and I love to interview the living heck out of this guy. He is fantastic. Anyway, today, Jack and his lovely wife, Cheryl, down there in Encinitas, which is south of me, they teamed up to write a very cool song about our friend, the Gingerbread Man. Perfect for the holidays. It just happens to be. He is Hall of Fame in music and in life and on this show. And I've said enough. Please welcome, everybody, Jack Tempchin.
Thank you.
How's that? I'm out of breath now. That I hope I have room for the rest of the show. Now that I give you a nice long intro there. It's very nice to talk to you and see you this time. How you been these days?
Just terrific, considering that we're not mingling with any other people for the last 8 months or so. But
yeah,
that has pluses and minuses, and so considering that, we're doing just fine.
What are some of the pluses? I mean, that's a nice thing to focus on, because I think everybody knows what the minuses have been in their own lives. But have you been learning to adapt and do some positive things with your time? And
absolutely, and of course, not having a real job, just being a songwriter, I don't need to go out and work and worry about that. So, but one thing is, you take for granted all the simple things in life, like meeting your friend for lunch and stuff like that. And now you don't take that for granted so much anymore.
Yeah, I agree.
Really,
yeah, that is a thing.
Computer way.
Yeah.
And also, I always wanted to learn things like how to record myself on the computer, but I would just call somebody else and have them come over, and I would just make the music. So I've had to learn this stuff. It's been really frustrating, but it's kind of rewarding. You have nothing else to do, and if you can learn new things right now, that's good. So
yeah, this is you're no stranger to technology and everything. But did you ever think you'd live long enough that we'd be doing something like this, where we can, like you only saw this on the Jetsons and some other shows back in the '60s about how this happens, and it's pretty incredible, isn't it?
Well, when I was a kid, Dick Tracy had a wrist radio, and that was but that was just a radio,
right?
To anybody in the world, anytime. And I read science fiction, and there's a genre called dystopia, which I usually avoid, which is like after the world ends, there's a few people living, and we're kind of in a thing like that.
Yeah, if you take it to heart, you can get a little depressed that the world's just like that, those novels and things like that, huh?
I predicted one like this, where everyone's still here, but they can't see each other personally, and they have to interact over our machines.
It's pretty incredible. Yeah. Right off the bat, let me just, because we can talk about it a little bit later too, but you and your wife, your lovely wife, Cheryl, got together and decided to write a little tune. You made a whole project out of it. There's a book involved with this, and there's, you had somebody illustrate it and a music video to accompany it, and it's pretty cool. And it's very charming. I mean, once you click on I'll give people a link so they can go check that video out on YouTube. I think that you can find it, and the song is pretty cool, and at the same time, I'm using cool a lot, but it's just emotionally, I had a good time watching that thing. It's very cute.
Yeah, it's at gingerbreadman.fun, not .com. I didn't
right, .fun.
So you put gingerbreadman.fun, you can see the video. And what happened is last year at Christmas, we were sitting around and my wife suggested we only have things on the tree that we could eat. So I thought that was a great idea. So she made some gingerbread men, and I'm sitting there with my guitar. I'll write a song about a cup of coffee if I'm looking at it, and I started making up a song about the gingerbread man. And my wife said, well, I never liked that story because in the end, he always gets eaten by the fox. That's the classic ending of the gingerbread man story. And it's like the moral is, no matter how fast or clever you are, your fate is written in stone, and you're just going to get eaten by the fox, So I said, well, let's write a little song and we'll change the ending. So she got interested, and we don't write together. My wife's an artist. This is one of her paintings.
Oh, nice. Thank you for pointing that out. Appreciate that.
So we wrote the song, and then I played a concert at the local theater, the La Paloma Theater, which is kind of a historic landmark theater in Encinitas. And everybody just kept telling me they love that song. So a friend of mine, Savannah Filia, is also a songwriter, and she makes her own videos to her songs, which are great. And she animates them, draws the pictures, and then makes them into videos. So I asked her, and she agreed, and she made the video of the song Gingerbread Man.
Nice.
A long time, and it came out so great that I decided, well, I just want to share it with everybody. So I'm on this Jimmy Buffett's record label, Mailboat Records, and they released it as a single, and I'm just trying to promote it, and everybody can go watch it for free on gingerbreadman.fun. And then also we made a book because she already had illustrated everything.
Right.
For sale on Amazon.
So the book came later. She made this video for you, the animation, and then later illustrated the book off of that?
Well, in other words, she had to do all the illustrations anyway to make the video.
Mm-hmm.
And so she just took those and we made them into a book.
Oh, good. She didn't have to do extra work. It was nice. It's it's great illustration. It really is nice. Yeah. Good design.
She's really.
Yeah. And it makes for a good. It's almost like the two can go together very beautifully because I listen to it and I go, I got to go watch the video again after listening to this because the video makes it even it takes it up another notch because you can really live it. So yeah, and I won't give away the ending. When I play it in the show here, people can find out what happens at the end because it's kind of a different twist, something I wasn't expecting to happen.
Little old lady and the little old man make themselves a gingerbread man. Before they could eat him, he said, I gotta go. Ran out the door and into the snow. The dog tried to get him and the goose did too. He said, ha ha ha, is that the best you can do? Tried to catch him with all their might. In the blink of an eye, he was out of sight. Look at him go, yeah, look at him fly. Red candy buttons and a green bow tie. Run, run as fast as you can. You can't catch me, I'm the gingerbread man. Can't catch me, I'm the gingerbread man. Across a river on a fox's back. The fox planned to have him for a midnight snack. He said, Mr. Fox, if you turn me loose, tell you where you can find a nice fat goose. Look at him go, yeah, look at him fly. Red candy buttons and a green bow tie. himself a mustache, put on some pants. Became a jazz musician in Paris, France. Every night with a real hot band, they play a little song called the Gingerbread Man. Look at him go, yeah, look at him fly. Red candy buttons and a green bow tie. Run, run as fast as you can. You can't catch me, I'm the Gingerbread Man. Can't catch me, I'm the Gingerbread Man. Ooh, yeah, me, oh my. Red candy buttons and a green bow tie. Run, run as fast as you can. You can't catch me, I'm the Gingerbread Man. Can't catch me, I'm the Gingerbread Man.
So you're saying that this is the only time you ever got together with your wife, that where she got into the act, so to speak, and wrote stuff with you?
Songs many years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But she being an artist, you know, she would actually, she's actually a better songwriter than I am. And she just decided to leave Jack something he could do. So we don't usually write together, but in this case we did. So it was really fun. We haven't written anything together for 20 years or whatever.
For those watching this part, watching and not listening, they might have noticed the sun's coming in. I guess we talked about your wife, and it brightened up the room here. The sun came into my room. Yeah. It's but speaking of weather, it's always nice down there in your neck of the woods, right down to Encinitas. It could be overcast, but most of the time it's pretty nice weather down there.
It's wonderful down here. Yeah.
Yeah. My daughter lives down in. She moved down to San Diego several years ago, so I like to. We've been to a lot of those towns down there in San Diego County, so it's nice, nice area.
Yeah.
What's that community like? You've been down there for quite a while, haven't you?
Yeah. Well, I'm from San Diego. I've lived here all my life, and this is about 30 miles up the coast. You know, I didn't grow up on the coast, and then once I discovered it, I started hanging out here. So, I don't know. It's kind of a small town. I mean, not real small, but still the part by the beach is pretty much like it always was. And it's just a great little place. Yeah.
I think you told me last time we talked that you're self-proclaimed a hippie, right? So you have sort of a, I think the small town life, I bet suits you well. You know, that community sounds like it's, at least from what I've heard, Encinitas is a nice little community down there to be part of.
Pandemic, for about 2 years, I every day would go over to the beach, sit on the cliff, and just play my guitar, and I'd video myself in case I made up a song, you know, and I'd make things up, and it's just a funny thing. Nobody else does it like that, but I just like to be near the beach. I'm not a surfer. I don't go in the water that much, but I just like to be there for the magic of it. So
I do. Yeah, I agree with that. I've done like music videos of my own where I filmed it, and I go down to the beach, and I don't even live that close to. I mean, I'm close enough, but I have to drive some ways to get there. Probably takes me about a half an hour to get to. Yeah. Huntington's probably my closest one to get to.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of fun. Let's see, where was I going with that? I forgot already. It's like, this is what happens when I don't write down questions for you. I just want to have a nice little chit chat with you, if that's all right. Oh, you know what? Just most recent little thing before the pandemic started, you had I noticed you finally got into the Songwriters Hall of Fame, which was nice. Did you go to New York and go to that ceremony and everything? So,
and of course, they didn't have one this year, but
yeah,
and it was fantastic. I've never cared about getting awards because I thought the main thing is people know my songs, and that's the award, you know. But I didn't think about the Songwriter Hall of Fame. It's a different thing. Yeah. And I could go, and one of my heroes were there. Like Tom T. Hall was inducted. He didn't show up because he's a pretty old guy.
Oh, okay. Yeah, he's still around, so yeah.
He is fantastic. And Cat Stevens, who got inducted, and John Prine.
And John Prine was there too, yeah. And a couple others, but wow.
And a whole bunch
good company.
And it was it was a great show, and it really gave me a boost. It was a great thing for me, you know. So I go, well, my wife says, take out the trash. And I go, hey, I'm in the Hall of Fame. You know, I don't.
Well, tell you, we'll just don't, you know, we'll leave your award behind and then go take out the trash. Yeah.
Take it out anyway.
I always like hearing about your wife because I think we talked about that. The reason I enjoy, you have a nice long marriage, and I relate to that because I've been with my wife since, you know, we were teenagers, and that's how. So I, you know, I'm a little bit behind you, but I'm on that same trajectory, that same path, and I appreciate that in you.
That happened. It's the greatest thing, you know.
Yeah. You say that she's a better songwriter with you, you know, maybe in passing, but how has she been, like, you know, beside you as you've had this career where you're not always in the spotlight, you're sort of behind the person in the spotlight a lot of times, you know, even though you tour, I know you're your own entity and everything, but you're basically, you know, the lyrical talent and the composing talent behind a lot of these great artists that you've, has she been with you every step of the way, or did she sort of step back and let, you know, Jack's going to go do his thing, or, you know what?
Because she's got her own thing, you know.
Okay.
She's self-happy, and so it's worked out really well. And I did tour a lot as an opening act for big acts for a while in the 70s and 80s, but not like a lot of people, you know. So we didn't have to go through the thing where you're trying to have a marriage and you're on the road 280 days a year.
Yeah.
You know, to do that. So. It's worked really well, and I'm very fortunate. And up until about 6 years ago, I wouldn't even do interviews or anything. I just I didn't have to. I'm a songwriter and didn't want anybody to recognize me. But then I noticed that when I tried to go out and play shows by myself, nobody showed up because they didn't know who I was. So I thought I'd better do something, you know. And it's been okay. I'm not super comfortable in the spotlight, but I do like to have people. And nowadays, Andy Warhol said everybody's got their 15 minutes of fame, but nowadays everyone is famous all the time, you know, because they're on the internet and you tune in every day and there's a whole newspaper about you and your friends and you know, just another person, you know.
That was, that was pretty cool that, and by the way, I'm a member of that Hall of Fame, at least a voting member. So I saw you on that thing and I voted for you because you're Jack. And that's, I had a biased interest in you anyway. So, you know, and Tom T. Hall was on that thing. And I was all excited about the lineup there, but never get to go to New York to do any of that stuff. It's hard.
I was in New York and they had a red carpet, you know, before the event.
Yeah.
And there was 6 people being inducted, you know, there's only 6 people. And I'd always gone to things with my friend Glenn Frey of the Eagles, you know, and I'd seen a lot of red carpet, but I was never the guy on the carpet, you know. So like I'm walking down and people are going, hey, CNN, we want to talk to you and stuff. I'm going, whoa, that's weird, you know. It was weird to be the guy for a minute, but I'm glad not to be the guy all the time.
When Glenn was getting nominated or getting an award and you were part of that song, so to speak, did you ever go to these things? Were you invited as also because you were the person also involved with it, or is just him?
Yeah.
No. Okay.
I didn't participate in most.
I always wonder about, you know, award things are funny. Sometimes the people and then just because you get invited doesn't mean you go to them either. So we've seen that where people don't show up for them, but. Yeah, just a little thing. I'm not a red carpet guy either. I get nervous on the red carpet watching that stuff happen, thinking if I was that one, I wouldn't want all that attention, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like your station in life. You're kind of like where you want to be. I think you always have been, right?
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, before I leave that Hall of Fame, I noticed that you were also Willie's kid inducted you, Lucas Nelson. That was pretty nice to have him sing one of your songs and give you the award, huh?
And he's a super talented guy too, you know. Plus I've become a huge fan of his dad, you know, who's like, I think he's around 90 years old or something.
Not that much, but yeah.
In the last 2 years, he's put out a couple of fantastic albums with new material and recording other people's songs. And, the guy's just, he's amazing. So, and Lucas is really great. So that was really nice of him too.
Yeah. I don't know where it was, maybe on the internet. I saw something I agreed with is, Willie's been like my granddad for probably the last 40 years. He's just like, once he started growing, remember he was clean shaven when he was writing all those songs back in the 50s and 60s. And then he started slowly getting the beard and the longer hair, and he kept that look for all this time, even today, I think. So it's interesting about that. Anyway, I'll get off that, but let me see if I can get you quickly. Last time we talked about maybe give me the super short version of a couple of these, because in your honor, I happen to be drinking a Wienerschnitzel here, and that ties into something. As people will know if they've ever heard your story about Peaceful Easy Feeling, back when you were writing that, I don't know if it was your office, but you used to go down to Wienerschnitzel and go, have some food and a drink and actually write stuff at the table, right?
Yeah, well, coming out of the hippie era and all, the world was my office, and I bought my first guitar in downtown San Diego at a pawn shop. It was a Stella for $13. And so I used to just walk around the streets everywhere in San Diego singing my songs, singing Bob Dylan's Tambourine Man and making up songs. And when I was writing Peaceful Easy Feeling, I went to the Wienerschnitzel on Washington Boulevard and ordered a Polish dog. And then I was sitting there at the outdoor table, and that's when I wrote the last verse of Peaceful Easy Feeling. So later, they gave me an award. They declared a Peaceful Easy Feeling Day in San Diego. And I went down there, and the Wienerschnitzel people presented me with a solid gold wiener. Got that going for me.
The Golden Wiener Award there.
Yeah.
That was years later. This is probably even now it was like 2010, 11, something like that. Yeah. Not too bad.
I was so surprised that the Wienerschnitzel place was still there. It's finally closed, and it's now a donut place, but the chain is still open.
Oh,
but
really?
I think at that time, all those years ago, with all the changes, that the Wienerschnitzel place would still be there 40 years later.
Yeah.
Incredible.
And I still call it Der Wienerschnitzel too. They've taken the der part off of most of it. I guess maybe it was easier for people to say, but yeah, you do get a peaceful, easy feeling going down to one of those places back then. And in the 70s or whenever you went, that was a place to go. I had a few near me, so
yeah,
that was almost like beach. I get ready to go down the beach, we get some food, or afterwards. That's the place we went. So Already Gone, was this the one? I don't know if it was Peaceful Easy Feeling or Already Gone, but you said that you were sleeping in the back of theater, right? Wasn't one of these stories where you were you sort of came up with a song? Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's okay. Already Gone. I used to run a coffee house at San Diego State College. It was called then. It's now university. And they built a student center, and they had a bowling alley, but they didn't have the money to complete it. So it was a huge room, and we took it over and made it a folk coffee house. And I was playing there with my friend Rob Strandland, and we were in the back room, which was actually the back of the kitchen, had these giant refrigerators. And, people always talk about the green room wherever you play. And the public imagines that it's a really nice room with some couches, and it's, the green room is usually a closet, a broom closet, and the brooms and stuff are still in there, at least for the opening act usually. And so you're in this really funky place like at Caesar's Palace or something, and then you go out and use a big stage, and then you go back to where the brooms and the mops are and stuff. But we were in the back room, and we opened this giant refrigerator, and there was a jug there, and we started drinking out of this jug. It turned out to be hard cider. I had never had a drink of alcohol before.
Oh, really?
And so we were drinking, and Rob Strandland and I started feeling really great. And we wrote this song in about 20 minutes, and I wrote probably one of the best lines of my songwriting career, which is, woo-hoo-hoo! because I felt so good. And we put that right in the song. And then about 4 or 5 years later, I guess Glenn Frey had been at that show because I didn't play the song much after that.
Really?
And
Okay.
I called and said, hey, the Eagles were doing their third album. He said, that country song you wrote, I think I could make it rock and roll. And the next day he called again, played it over the phone for me from the studio. And that's how Already Gone happened to get on the radio and everything.
Wow. Was that the first time you had met him, or was it, he'd known you already by then? It was.
I had known Glenn, let's see, since about 1969 or something.
Okay.
J.D. Souther came down to San Diego and played at a place I played a lot called the Candy Company. And first time I saw him, I just thought these guys are so great. And I invited him to stay at my big hippie pad. I had rented a huge house and filled it with a bunch of friends and musicians. And so every time they came down to San Diego, they stayed there. And I remained good friends with both of those guys. And really? So, my joke is if you want to make it in the big time, you hang around with a superstar about 5 or 6 years before they become a star. That's all you got to do. So I knew Glenn quite a while before he put the Eagles together and everything.
Yeah. I remember watching JD, met him recently, maybe 7 years ago. And he talked about that group. They were in Long Branch Penny Whistle. And he was telling stories about, he and Glenn just, driving down Sunset and, just the good old days, just having a good time and being buddies and musicians. And
absolutely.
That's kind of nice. In many ways, he never really got away from that, Glenn. I think he's, even though he got, rich and he got famous and he was golfing and having movies and he was just enjoying life with his, and even as a family man, he was enjoying it.
Absolutely. That was one of his great gifts. He could be all business and all fun, and he could mix them up and do them all at the same time. I think a lot about the fact that he never left anything on the table in life. He wasn't afraid to try anything. He enjoyed everything to the max, and yet he did an incredible amount of fantastic things.
Yeah, I like hearing people talk about him, like yourself, who was very close to him, because we're close to the family in some way because we're related by marriage, and I've only seen Glenn, but I knew Cindy and I knew the 3 kids.
Right.
Even Deacon. I remember Deacon sitting in my mother-in-law's house when we were having some kind of party. This is around Christmas time. How have you ever got one of those cards that those discs that they would record for Christmas?
Yeah.
I think he brought over one of those, and Deacon was on the couch playing. And of course, this was back in the mid 2000s. I wasn't even thinking about it, thinking that this guy was going to be famous. But he was, you could tell he took it seriously playing music. So
yeah, you're reminding me every Christmas Glenn would make a whole album with his family, singing, Cindy sing, and then Deacon would play, and then he would just send some to a small group of people, So I have these albums, and they're just amazing, like as if he didn't have enough to do. Just record some Leonard Cohen song or some, just things he liked.
Right.
It's incredible.
Yeah. Well, that says something about, even though in some ways it might have been work, but most of the time he just had a good time creating things like that. So just wanted to throw that in because I thought that was, never got to know the man. Who knows if I ever would have, but, because he was always, even then he was still traveling. We'd been over to his house a couple times. In his absence, he had to go on tour when the Eagles got back and did a tour 4 or 5 years ago shortly before he was gone. Everybody loved the guy, so it was nice. It was nice to know that he wasn't a jerk. That I think that's what I was getting at.
When he did get a family, he did a flip flop at a certain point where, he was staying up all night and all that, and then one day he just said, "No, that's over now," and he got this guy Pete to be his trainer and come over at 4:45 a.m. every day and start training him, and he started. Being a day person. And then he just decided that I'm going to be there at dinner for my family every day. So when he was home, he was always a family guy, and he would be there for dinner with his kids and for the rest of his life. You know, he just did that. Kind of an amazing thing for a rock star, you know, when you think about that.
I think that was that was supposed to be an entree into something about, I was going to ask about him, but it was a long buildup. But once the Eagles sort of had their first calling it quits, you know, back in 1980, when they decided that was it, and they were going to do some separate things from now on, you still hung around. And you think you maybe could share with us a story how you got together with Glenn, like for the first time, to start to write some songs? And
yeah,
I think people love to hear that.
I wasn't, you know, I was still friends and we'd see each other, but I wasn't seeing him very much at all when he was in the Eagles. He was 100% busy, but he called and he said, yeah, the Eagles are breaking up for a while, and you want to come over and write some songs? So I said, sure. You know, I came over, and he and I had known each other and been great friends, but we had never, and he'd done a couple of my songs, but we had never written together. And I always kind of wanted to. And he had this A-frame house up in Hollywood Hills that James Cagney used to live in, you know, just one big room. And so I came over, and I came in, and he had 100 candles burning in this place, and he had a couple of bottles of red wine. And I said, each bottle of this red wine probably cost more than my car, you know. And I said, Glenn, because this is songwriter wine. You have to have some of this, you know. So I have a sip of this wine, and I go, well, what's the candles? Are you, do you have a date later? You know, no, it's, you know, the Muse, Jack, the Muse, she's up there, and we're not the only guys trying to write a song tonight, and we want the Muse to come down and hang around with us. You know, so we were thinking about that, and we got out some guitars, and we're thinking, well, what about this Muse? What about some girl who, you know, like she has to choose between two like really super cool guys, you know? So, and that's how we wrote the song, The One You Love. Are you going to stay with the one who loves you? Or are you going back to the one you love?
That's awesome.
We did that the first night, and we wrote a song called I Found Somebody.
Uh-huh.
Later, they were both on the charts. So for 14 years, from 1980 to 94, when the Eagles got back together, I just wrote songs with Glenn and kept having hit songs on the charts. And, you know, to be able to just have a great friend of yours turn out to be one of the world's greatest songwriters, and you get to work with them, is a pretty fortunate thing. And I enjoyed it to the max.
Well, that's nice. And I like how when you said that you had met in 1969, I think you said, for him to come back, you know, 10 or 11 years later and still say that, hey, I'm thinking about you. You know, now that this part's over with, if you're willing, let's get together and try something out. I like that. I like that he was still thinking of you anyway. So that the candles and everything, was that just a one night stand thing? Did he do that other times, or was it just that one time that he wanted to introduce you to it? Or
not quite in that way, but he did have the feeling. You know, he would. One time he flew me over to Hawaii a couple times to write songs over there, and a lot of times he would just bap out a little candle. He even traveled with one, you know, just to, like, I don't know, just kind of a token thing to set the mood. Now we're gonna open ourselves to, you know, to what's happening and have a song come, you know.
Yeah, maybe that was his way. You know, that it seemed to work, right?
Part of it for sure.
Yeah. I don't recommend everybody do that. That's a lot of candle, especially with the wine. That's how much wine, how many bottles you said? About 100 bottles of wine in there, and they all cost about
the wine and 100 candles.
Oh, geez. The 100 candles, but the wine, you're saying the wine was expensive then. Good grief. Oh yeah. Well, thanks for that. And then, he wasn't the only guy that you were writing songs for. I mean, I'll just rattle off a couple very quickly. You did something during that same era. You were writing stuff for Glenn Campbell, for Tanya Tucker. I mean, I don't know if you did you just sort of put your songs out there and then they found a home later on? Is that how that worked?
Yeah.
That one with Glenn Campbell, I can still remember that. That wasn't a very popular album, but I remember hearing that song "Rollin'." That's the one that you wrote for Glenn, or that Glenn Campbell recorded, and I listen to that thing nowadays, and I say Glenn Frey could have recorded that, and he could have done something with that too. It had that style, that Jack Tempchin style. So,
yeah, I met a guy who was in Glenn Campbell's band, Joe Rainey, and he was really cool guy. He looked like a biker, is incredibly muscled and badass looking, but he was an incredible piano player. So we wrote that song, and he got it to Glenn Campbell. So I never even met Glenn Campbell, but next thing I know, he's recorded that song. So that was great.
That's another one that's gone. I wanted to meet Glenn Campbell so bad. I went to. He was a hero of mine forever. So I always wanted to just at least meet him and shake his hand and say thanks because he inspired me and everything. But this was just as he had started to show signs of his his disease. And he performed at the Grammy Museum, another place I like to go to sometimes see. Which, by the way, you've had stuff over there. You've had things on display at the Grammy Museum. True.
2 shows there.
Yeah. You did 2 shows.
I did 2 shows. You know, they have a certain way of doing it where somebody interviews you on stage.
Right. I remember those.
And then you play. So I did that twice. That was really great. Yeah. And then my Stella guitar and my original guitar they had up there for a while too.
Yeah. Yeah, I know what you're saying. You get 2 chairs and you just get up there on the stage and he interviews you and everybody laughs and has a good time. It's over with. Oh, you know what I liked? Later on down the line, you wrote something that Patty Loveless recorded. It was called To Feel That Way at All. I thought that was a beautiful song. I hadn't heard that before, so I went to go check that out. I had never known that existed, but that's a beautiful, beautiful tune.
Something I co-wrote with Jim Lauderdale. And Jim Lauderdale's a huge guy in the country music and
right.
What do they call it? They have a name for a certain genre of music there.
I don't know if it's Americana. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, Jim Lauderdale. Yeah, I know the name. Sure.
And Jim, he came out to my house here, wrote for a couple of days, and man, the guy, his mastery of chords and everything is amazing. So we wrote that song, and also he does a show with Buddy Miller called the Jim and Buddy Show, and it's a radio show on XM. And I was a guest on one of those shows, but their shows are fantastic. They take a person as a guest and they find out everything they ever did, and they play it all and they ask great questions. And so, yeah, Jim's a fantastic guy. And so we wrote that, and somehow she recorded it. So that was wonderful.
Oh, sounds great. That's the kind of show I like to do, but I'm afraid I would go too long. I'd be like talking 3 hours trying to ask everything I could. It would go crazy. One last one. You did White Shoes, the one that Randy Meisner recorded. That was another cool. I'm just picking out ones that I really liked of yours back then, that even though there was a lot more that I'm not mentioning, but so that's another sort of Eagles connection. You've crossed paths or performed with, you had Joe Walsh play on a couple of your tracks, right? Back in the day. And then, so you've worked with him and Timothy Schmidt, and who's the other guy? Oh, and Glenn Frey. So I think those are the 3 Eagles that you did, but
that's true.
That was kind of nice that Randy recorded one of your songs there. I thought that was a good version of it. And
I had gone to Amsterdam to visit my friend Robin Lent, who's a great musician artist, and he died this year from COVID over in France. But I visited him in Amsterdam, and everybody over there was wearing these white shoes. Guys were wearing white shoes, which I never did here. So I wrote the song with him, and we went to record it, the demo, to his next door neighbor, Hans Hollestel, who became a famous producer. And so we're recording it, and there's no drum machines then. They hadn't invented drum machines. But Hans had recorded on 2-track tape, drummers playing, and then he cut them and spliced them in a loop. So you put that loop on the tape machine, and he spliced it just right so it would play over and over. And so he opened a drawer at his house, and he looked in, and there were all these little tape loops laying there. And he said, well, let's have Willie DeLoop play the drums on this. So he gets out a loop, puts it on, and then so we made a demo with Willie DeLoop, and I sang, and Robin Lent played bass. And then Hans, who's an incredible guitar player, he played the guitar. And so when Randy Meisner recorded it, his producer called me and said, "Hey, I tried a whole bunch of drummers. I can't get anybody to play that like that. Who is that guy? I want to get him to play." So I had to tell him it was Willie DeLupe, you know?
Yeah.
And then the other thing which really surprised me, which was great, was one of my favorite performers of all time, Emmylou Harris, did an album, and she recorded the song White Shoes.
Oh, no kidding.
Called the album White Shoes. So that was really cool.
That's good. See, isn't that cool? Like you were saying, you always wanted people just to know your songs, and this is a great way to do it, especially when big artists and respected people get involved and start performing them, and that's what it's all about. At least I can see that for you.
Well, so many people write songs and they put just the same amount of effort into it and everything. I'm just so fortunate that I don't know what it is. I just, you're just born as a communicator. So in other words, it's just as hard to write a song that's not as good, but I'm just lucky that when I write songs, people respond to them and they seem to work. So it's just been a glorious life for me because I love nothing better than just to be writing some songs and having a great, cool idea and trying to get it into a song.
It seems like right in that era, though, that 1979 to 80, just like even right before you and Glenn started really getting hot with those songs, that how did you had all these things that you were writing? You probably were just like, coming up with stuff and you file that away. Let's write another one. How'd you end up getting all these songs? How'd you shop them around to, somebody had to discover them. So how did you get them discovered like that? Most
of them, people just heard me sing them. Because in those days we had the coffee houses where they, there was no alcohol. It was like apple cider, and it was the folk music scene. And there was about 6 or 8 of them in San Diego at one point. And I would do what they called the hoot night, the open mic night, so I would introduce people, and that's how I made my living. I'd do once a week, I'd do one here and I'd make $34. And then that's how I was doing it. So I got used to being on stage really a lot, usually with almost nobody there. And so you played your songs and then you figured out by playing them what was working and what wasn't. You could just feel from the audience. And I never thought I'd be a professional songwriter until people started coming up to me, like this second song I wrote. A guy named Ted Stock said, "Can I play that song?" It was called Diamond Ring. And so he started playing it, and people all over San Diego started coming to me and say, "What a great song." Well, he was a fantastic player and singer, And when a bunch of people, every time I'd write something, other people in the scene would want to do it and start playing it. And even as time went on, I went up to the Troubadour and I would play the open mic nights. And even though later I was signed with Warner Brothers Publishing, and I had all kinds of other publishing experiences and all that, none of those things ever placed any of my songs. So none of that ever worked. As far you think somebody else, and it works for some people. A company gets their songs and runs them around, but it always seemed like somebody just heard me do the song and decided that they wanted to do it.
Yeah, there's sort of a parallel lesson I'm learning in there. So that your way sounds like a great way, but other people have tried it maybe another way and it worked for them. So, but it sounded like the way you did it was a good way to do it for you.
Yeah, everybody has a different, just like everyone I run into has a different way of writing a song. Some people, they just sit down, I got a title, I'm going to write it out here, Glenn and I did that, but we also have what we called El Blurto. So we get a tape machine running and we would just play and we start making up lyrics. And we just make them up, blurt them out for a long time. And then later we would edit them and put them together and work on them, So, but that'll work for some people. And And then Leonard Cohen, he'll just struggle for 10 months on a lyric, painstaking. Everyone has a different way and it works for them. So that's kind of a lesson there.
Yeah, that Alberto sort of, I remember you telling me that before, but I think that in some way that's what my buddy and I used to do that a long time ago when we were writing songs together. We just get together. He was the guitar player and I would play bass or play keyboard. I wasn't a good musician, but I would try to do the stuff. And whatever we were jamming with at that time, we were just coming up with some kind of crazy, chord progression. And all of a sudden I started blurting out things. I would have that on the tape, and then I would take those tapes and then take them with me in my delivery truck as I was driving around town. And and these things would come to me. So I wouldn't have to like think about it so hard. I'm a real perfectionist and I overanalyze things. So I would take these things into the truck with me and sort of like let my whatever that other consciousness. So I'm not overthinking this stuff. And then I would quickly write down lyrics and I'd finish the song that way. So everybody has a different way of doing it, but I like that Alberto thing. That I relate to that somehow.
That's exactly how I do it. And then for a couple of years in Los Angeles, I would go into the recording studio for like a couple of years, and I would just make stuff up in there. And then later, me and the guys I was jamming in the studio with would drive around to the car to go down to the Pacific Dining car, which would still be open all night. And on the way, going down 6th Avenue, we'd have a CD of what we did that night, and so we'd be listening to it and we'd be going, aren't we great? Listen to that. Isn't that cool? And then I would take that and make songs out of it. Looking back, that's some of the most fun times I had in my life, just jamming all night with people in the studio, making stuff up and listening back to it. So it's kind of a glorious thing. And then sometimes, you hit, I call a red button song. You hit the red button, the recording button, and you just start making stuff up. Mm-hmm. And you'll go, I don't think I got anything. Then you listen back, and right in the middle, there's a whole song that you made up, and you don't even remember making it up. And there it is, and it's all there, so it's a pretty cool thing.
It is very cool. Yeah, thanks. One little chunk that I left out, in the story is that the Funky Kings was something that you were hopefully it was a happy experience. I thought that I listened back to that album from time to time that you guys made back then, and it was a short-lived group. You weren't together for very long, yeah. But that one song, that one album, it still stands up. I listened to it, and it still has a nice feel to it. All the songs are really good, yeah. Especially the ones that Jack Tempchin wrote, of course. But you had different guys in the group who also would contribute maybe 2 or 3 songs, and then so did you. I think 3 or 4.
Yeah, that was an amazing event in my life. I had gone up to LA to try to get my own record deal and stuff, and there was a band that I loved called Honk. That every musician in Honk, they're from Laguna, had a hit called 5 Summer Stories. Anyway, Richard Steckel, he'd gone up to make his own album in LA. And then this guy, Jules Shear from Pittsburgh, he was there playing at the Ice House. And we met, I met Richard, and he said, let's go see Jules. And then we went over somebody's house, and we were sitting around, and we started playing together, the 3 of us, and it was just like this incredible magic. And those 2 guys are some of the best songwriters I ever ran into. So the first night we're together, I played my song Slow Dancing, and then Richard played a song called My Old Pals, and then Jules played a song called It's So Easy to Begin, which those are all on that album. And I mean, they're just the greatest songs. So we got signed by Clive Davis, and we got produced by Paul Rothchild, who had produced The Doors and Janis Joplin.
Right. I knew that sounded familiar with Rothschild. Yeah.
So that was just a fantastic experience.
And you had some cool songs that you wrote on there. One of them was Mattress on the Roof. Just the title alone sounds like something you wrote. just in my mind, Mattress on the Roof sounds just like a great image.
Yeah, I lived on 34th Street in San Diego, and actually my roommate, it was his place, but next to his place, there was a garage, a tiny little garage, and the roof leaked. And I rented it from him for $34 a month. And because it was all moldy and the roof leaked, I only stayed there for about 6 years while I was going to college. And so I built a place on the roof, just like in the song. I got a mattress from the Goodwill box outside the supermarket, put it on the top of my car, took it home, and I put this mattress on the roof because girls didn't want to come into my little garage room. Yeah. And so, and then I took dyed some burlap sheets and made an enclosed area where you could go in there and be on the mattress outside. And so that's what the song Mattress on the Roof is about. I think I pretty much captured it in that song.
I remember talking with you, and it just sort of got me interested in listening to that. And I noticed one thing about the songs that you wrote. I mean, I know it was produced by the same people, but you could tell the personality in your songs versus Jules' songs. Jules' songs had a different feel to them for some reason, and Richard's had a different feel to them. Yeah. So you all had different styles or, different loves of influences, but you brought them all together and made a nice record. But that was interesting that whoever was Rothschild's the guy producing the album, you said, he probably knew to get out of the way in some ways and let you create what you wanted to create.
He had to wrestle with it because there were three completely different visions going.
That's what I saw. Yeah.
And didn't last that long because, I mean, everybody, Jules went on to write a bunch of hits and everything. He's still making great albums and his songs are totally unique. And Rick as well is still writing fantastic songs.
Well, can I tell you something? There was a little bit of bringing up the Funky Kings because Jules, I'm going to talk to him tomorrow.
Is that right?
That's right. And it's only a coincidence that I sought you out because I wanted to get an interview with you too because of Gingerbread Man. Wow. And I realized that Jules, we've been trying to set this up for about a month or two. And I said, I got to make sure that I talked to you before you talked to him. So that way I can maybe get the lowdown, see if you guys were friendly still, or, that you had good feelings about being in that band. That way I can relate that to him when I talk to him. But I was real excited about talking with him. But when I found out, I go, yeah, that's right. You guys were you're on that album cover. You can see you're like sitting right next to him in the picture.
Oh, we went through that and it was really something. And so I talked to Jules kind of recently, a couple of years ago. I said, what I always remember about you, Jules, is that you would be sitting there with your headphones on. Like when we got together with the Funky Kings, we finally went over to Jules's apartment one time. We walked in the door and the living room had like one couch and a mound of records, LPs, vinyl LPs that was about 3 feet tall, just stacked in a big stack, right? In a big mound in the middle of the floor. And that was his apartment. And we'd go, well, how can you find a record? But we'd be sitting there talking to him and we'd be talking about some song and he'd just go over to that big mound and he'd just know and he'd pull out that record. So that was his life. And he would just be listening all the time. And later on the headphones, he'd just always be listening to music. So I said, yeah, that's how I remember you. And he said, well, Jack, I still do that. And he listens. This was just a couple of years ago. And then he listens to stuff constantly, every kind of thing. And then he makes up CDs for himself and a couple friends. So he started sending me some of these CDs. And so mention that too. They're just fantastic. They have, it'll have like Elvis and it'll have James Brown. And people from the 30s and people I never heard of. And, he's just a musical sponge taking everything in. And I said, gee, you ought to make some playlists on Spotify and, do have all these. He goes, no, I don't even want to bother with that. These are just for me and my friends. He's been making them up for years. But they're the best song collections I've ever heard. They're my favorite thing. So
that's a good endorsement. I like that. Yeah, I just thought I was so excited. I was telling my wife, she says, "Get this!" Yeah, and she's not hip on who all the songwriters are. The people that are sort of more in the background type songwriters. And I had to explain to her, Jules has made a name for himself too. So he's like wrote for Cyndi Lauper and had a hit with her, and and the Bangles and some. I'm leaving a couple other people, just like your credits. You know, you put the ones at the top, the cream of the crop. If those are your only claim to fame, you did some pretty good stuff. But you know, he's probably got a huge body of work that I'd love to talk with him about too. So
he put out an album called Slower, I think a month ago or something.
Yeah.
Primal Fire that I was listening to. It's got some lyrics like your body, you may think it's yours, but it means less to me than some old baseball scores. And I listened to his work, and every song and fantastic melodies and stuff, it's unique to him. You know, the songs, the way he does them and everything. It's just, you know, if you love it, there it is. And it's just completely unique to him. It's great.
And he played guitar in the Funky Kings with you. Was that his instrument?
He played guitar.
Yeah. Okay. I always, for some reason, I saw him at a piano. I thought he was more the keyboard guy, but he was playing guitar.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just trying to get that straight. I'll ask him, but it's just great that this week I get to talk to both you guys. It'll be a Funky Kings week for me.
He tuned the guitar, and he tuned the guitar in some tuning that no one else has ever used. He came up with it himself, and he only plays with his thumb going over the top of the guitar, and that's it. He doesn't use any of his fingers when he plays.
Really?
He constructed this tuning. I go, well, what is that? He goes, well, if I block all the strings, I got a major chord. But if I then leave this string open, I got a minor chord. But if I move this one, then I got a 7 diminished chord. And if I, he had just figured it all out so that he could easily write songs without a lot of hassle and get any kind of chord, I don't know.
Oh, you've given me some good thoughts, because I did that because I failed to learn things the proper way when I was learning guitar. I learned the basics, from a teacher at the Park and Rec, and then shortly thereafter I said, I've had it with these lessons. I'm going to learn on my own out of books, and I just started making up my own chords and going like, well, if I bar this one, that sounds even better than, I like this A better than this A, so we'll do that. So. Oh, I got to talk to him. Thanks for these little tidbits about him. Anyway, let's go back to the Gingerbread Man so I can make sure that I give that justice. So Jack Tempchin and his wife, Cheryl, had written a song, an updated version, a story of the Gingerbread Man, the old tale. I guess that's anonymous, right? So I don't know who actually wrote the real song. Do you know the real fairy tale or book or whatever?
There's all kinds of... Yeah,
it's sort of been passed down from...
I don't know.
Yeah. Jack and Cheryl Tempchin, they made a video, which was, animation by this woman, Savannah Filia. Is that how you say it? Yeah. And she was also a songwriter. And you can watch the Gingerbread Man come to life in a music video that she animated. And then some of that animation is in the book. They made a little children's type book. You can look at this video at gingerbreadman.fun, not .com, but .fun, F-U-N. I was telling Jack it was a good feeling, and it has a nice little sort of a classic country feel, like a country song, Yeah. And what I found was nice, your publicist sent me a little one sheet on the song and everything, and I noticed that you used to get together for family gatherings, and your wife's great grandmother or grandmother, Anna Olson, which immediately I perked up because that's my last name, Olson, spelled the same way. So I said, hey, great. I like her already. So she had a gingerbread recipe, I guess, that got passed down, and you make that every year, huh?
Well, my wife's great-grandmother had a ginger snap cookie recipe, and my wife makes those. And then to make the Gingerbread Man, she had to change the recipe a little so they wouldn't fall apart.
Yeah, so you can make them into little men.
Gingerbread Man, fun. It goes to the YouTube of the video, and in the description underneath, if you hit more, it has the 2 recipes in case anybody wants to make the Gingerbread Man
I saw those
recipe, and they're quite delicious.
Well, good. I wonder if I could. Yeah, in your honor, I'm eating these store-bought ones right here. But so I had Wienerschnitzel over here, and then I got my ginger. What a great snack to have My compliments to you on I had to at least bring you on to, if at the very least, just compliment you on what a wonderful that was worth doing, that project. So I'm glad you did it.
In my podcast, if I could, before we
Yeah.
So I'm doing a podcast called the Three Jacks podcast, and I just play 3 songs of mine, mostly that no one's ever heard, and I comment on, talk about them a little. And so it's not a very long podcast. And then I started running a contest called the Cover Me Contest. So the podcast is on Apple and Spotify and stuff. So you just listen to the podcast and do a cover version of one of the songs, and then you can win $1,000. That's the prize.
You pick any song, or do you have songs that you give them to cover?
Well, for this contest, it was any song in the podcast.
Okay.
So none of my famous songs, but just songs, all these songs that are in the podcast. And there's like 5 episodes, so it's about 15 songs. But now I've opened it up to most of my songs are available, just not Peaceful, Easy Feeling, Already Gone, and Slow Dancing.
Right, but if you pick something from a later time, like Party Town or what are some of the other ones? True Love? Did you write that with him? Something I'm trying to think of. Yeah. So, but only if you had it in the podcast, that's the one you actually can cover.
Well, that was for this contest, but somebody already won the contest, and I've announced the winner and everything, and they did a fantastic version of the song "Waiting," and so now I've started a new contest, and for this one, they can record anything in my catalog except those 3 hits. So any song they want.
Nice.
And
that's
it's
good.
A prize. So I'm just hoping to announce it on your show here. So
no, I love that. Your podcast is, if you go to, if I told people just go to jacktempchin.com, your website, will the information for the podcast be there?
Just type in three Jacks podcast.
Three Jacks podcast. And why do you call it that? Are the 2 other guys with you, or
Apple Podcast? And
who are the other 2 Jacks? Are you all 3?
All me, but my idea is like playing cards. Like I deal out these playing cards, and always comes up 3 Jacks, and each Jack is a song by me.
Yeah.
So they're changing it now, but for a podcast, you weren't allowed to use anybody else's material because
I know. Yeah.
And I thought, well, okay, so they're all songs by me, and I've gone through all these demos. I got so many songs that no one's ever heard. And so this is kind of my way of getting them out. And I think it's super entertaining to have all these different songs, and I tell the stories behind each one. And cool.
So this has been going on since last year, or did you started the contest?
Yeah, it's about 9 or 10 months ago I started doing. The contest was about 3 months long, and now this one's 2 months long, and it just started a couple days ago.
Sounds like a great concept, and that you can get a little bit of some love, a little pat on the back for your songs. You're listening to somebody else do a nice version of it, right?
People do my songs, it's really cool.
Yeah. Well, speaking of your songs, real quick, when I was talking about the Funky Kings, I did leave out the one big thing that happened out of that is that you guys recorded this song called Slow Dancing, which you wrote, and then Johnny Rivers later on he made it famous. And we talked a little bit about that. People can go to my podcast and go look up Jack Tempchin's, interview with me. I think it was March. It was about 2.5 years ago. But he was great that day and today. But one thing I wasn't aware of, because I looked at some of your other credits. Johnny Rivers was also involved with you for the theme song for the TV show Seventh Heaven. I saw that he and Steve Plunkett.
Yeah.
So I was just curious. Do you have any story about that? Did you know that it was going to be in there? Or did you and those other 2 guys get together and actually write that?
Well, actually, what happened is they asked Johnny Rivers to write a theme song for this show, and it was a pilot.
Yeah. So
we actually watched the pilot, and then Johnny and I wrote the theme song, and then we turned it in, and then, this is kind of weird, but they said, no. We're rejecting that. And so we thought, okay. And then they had another song, and we listened to it, and it was exactly the same. So we got, I would have let it go, but Johnny, he got some lawyers, and so finally they, so I never met Steve Plunkett. You know,
Okay.
So they said, okay, we'll have the three of us be writers, and that's it. But it's definitely the song we wrote. And we had no idea that show was going to be on for 100 episodes and get syndicated and become a big deal. But it was fun. I love to do that. You know, see a pilot or an episode and then write a song. That's what we did with Miami Vice as well.
Right. You Belong to the City. Is that what you're talking about? Or Smuggler's Blues? I don't know which one was in that. Were they both in there? Yeah. There used to be a version that you did. I heard you doing like an acoustic version of that, and it sounded so much different, but I always thought that was a great version. It really discerns the difference between when, you know, it's fully produced and then when you do it on your own. And that's the nice thing about going back and listening to some of your previous albums. You can get a different perspective in that same song just by hearing you do it, you know.
Yeah, it's so different, partly because a lot of times, Glenn, we wrote Smuggler's Blues actually right in this little studio that I'm in here, but he said, yeah, it should have some cool slide, and, you know, he puts these things together, and later when I'm trying to work it up to do it, I realized I can't do it that way, you know, so I did it with a dobro and some slide, but not the same as he did. But so, yeah, I have my own versions, and they're different, you know.
It always makes me wonder if that was your intent all along, or, you know, and then later on it became something. Are you pleasantly surprised when you hear a new version of it done? Maybe not the vision you had for it in the first place? Oh,
yeah, absolutely. When people record any of my songs, I mean, they always change something, almost always, because you have to make the song fit yourself, you know.
Right.
When you do it. And so I accept that, and almost always people, they do a really good job. For me, that's been my experience anyway, you know, so I usually really like hearing a new angle on
That's good to know. Yeah, it sounds like you're pretty good. You're pretty easygoing when it comes to that. You don't want to throw up. It's like, oh, that was a terrible version. I don't want to ever hear that again, because it's something you wrote.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had to throw that Johnny Rivers thing because that was. It is kind of nice when you had it. You know, you had a theme song going there. By the way, Johnny, did you meet each other back in 76, 77, or whenever he recorded that thing, or was the first time you met him when you were doing this thing?
Well,
the Seventh Heaven thing.
The story is he heard the Funky Kings version on the radio. It got up to number 60 on the Billboard charts, the version with me singing Slow Dancing. And he said, boy, I would do that song if it wasn't already a hit. And somebody said, it's not a hit. So then he recorded it and he promoted, he took it all around the South to every radio station, and he made it a giant hit, you know, and then it's still being played. But I didn't know him then.
Yeah.
Later, we met, became really good friends, and we've written a whole bunch of songs on his albums over the years and worked on a lot of stuff together. And it's been a great privilege to me. He's kind of underknown. I mean, he has a double album of top 10 hits, you know, Secret Agent Man, Poor Side of Town, Maybelline.
Right.
It goes on. And for a certain era, he's one of the giants, and he's just so good. So,
and weren't a lot of those songs, wasn't some of those hits actually recorded there on Sunset at the Whiskey? Didn't he do like Memphis, and some of that stuff got on the radio? Just that recording, I think.
He did some live, and then he would play at some restaurant in the afternoon. Then he would go to the Whiskey. Once they opened, his show was the most popular thing in town. And he would play and would look down, and there were all these giant movie stars in the crowd, you know. And then he would play until 2 a.m, and then they would go to a studio on Sunset and cut a bunch of records, and then like 3 weeks later, those records would be on the top of the charts. So he was having a heck of a life right then, you know.
Oh wow. Hey Jack, it's been a pleasure. Before I let you go, is there anything I've asked you a similar question last time. Maybe I'll just make it simple this time. You ever had any days when you weren't, because you're pretty consistent in writing. You ever been like uninspired for a period of time and you just decided, maybe I won't be writing songs for a little bit because it's just not happening? Or was it always good for you?
Well, you always have, I just let it go if it's not happening. I don't believe in writer's block or think about that, and I try to put myself on a schedule and say I'm going to write for 4 o'clock every day, as I did that for a month one time. And I look back and the songs weren't any good. So when I feel like it, I just do it. And I almost always just feel like it, It's like you just have a thought. You think that's an interesting thought, and you want to make a song out of it, or sit down with the guitar and just start playing. And after a while, if you just keep playing long enough, things start to come out. And so I don't worry about not doing it. I just love it, and I just always do it.
I'm gathering that it's good. It's good to get in that habit. Then just keep having those thoughts, and don't worry about when it stops for a little bit. It'll come back around like a up and down cycle.
Yeah, it's just something you love.
Well, songwriting's been very, very good to you. So I'm glad that you're still doing it. And Jack, I'm really thrilled that you came back and decided to do this again. Maybe if you're so inclined, you can do it again with me when some other big project comes up. I have to chase you down because I think you changed management and changed labels but you're always the same guy. You're still kicking it and doing it. And all my best to your family life. I hope you and your wife have many, many years ahead of you, and that we get through this dumb pandemic thing and get back to something good. I always want to say get back to the way things were, but now we got to climb out of it and do something new. So
maybe even better. I mean, I hope the brighter times are ahead for everybody. So
yeah.
That'd be great. Well, thank you so much for having me on here. I
appreciate that. Hey, everybody, don't forget to go check out, I guess you can Google 3 Jacks podcast. Go check it out. I'm going to make sure I do that. If I had the time or, if I had enough time, I'd go try to do one too, do it to cover and win some money or whatever you're doing. I don't know what you're offering, but it's just the honor and the fun to do it, I think is great.
Great.
So jacktempchin.com, 3 Jacks podcast. And here's to you, Jack. I really appreciate it. Right. You've been great. And I'm going to tell Jules what you said because I liked what you had to say about him. And I'll tell him you said hi, hopefully, if that's okay.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks a lot.
You have a nice Merry Christmas and all my best to everybody. Okay.
You too, Dean. Thanks.
Take care of yourself. Thank you. Bye.